She was the iconic voice of an age and the face of American childhood fantasy films that endeared themselves to audiences across the country. The public saw Doris Day as the embodiment of happiness. She was perpetually radiant, flawless, and unapproachable. Hers, however, had darker undertones than anybody could have predicted, as do all brilliant pictures. Even though she has been dead for 6 years, whispers of long-buried secrets, betrayal, and heartache continue to circulate. How was it that the woman who provided joy to many lives could keep her pain hidden from view? What kept her from returning to the Hollywood scene she once ruled in her latter years? What secrets did she keep hidden until the end of her life? Biography and professional start. Doris Marianne Kappelhoff came into this world in Cincinnati, Ohio, on April 3, 1922. Doris Day went from humble origins to prominence with little to no publicity. William Joseph and Alma Sophia Kappelhoff were German immigrants, and their family was filled with music from a young age. William was a music teacher and choir master, while her mother took care of the house. Doris lost her older brother Richard when he was a baby, leaving her with only Paul as a live sibling. Doris had an aptitude for rhythm and acting from a young age. She became very dedicated to dancing, and she and Jerry Doherty even competed as a winning duo in dance contests across the nation. It appeared for a time that dancing would be her life's work. However, destiny intervened. Doris was 15 years old in 1937 when tragedy befell her on her way to a party. Her severely fractured leg was the result of the collision with a freight train. She lost all hope of ever making it as a professional dancer in an instant. During Doris's protracted recuperation, she came across the life-altering present. She hummed and sang along to the big band music and jazz vocalists that flooded the airwaves while she was bored at home. Particularly striking to her was Ella Fitzgerald's elegant use of phrase. As a means of exploring her abilities and developing vocal control, Doris began singing for herself. It didn't take long for her loved ones to notice the talent. What started out as a method to pass the time while I was healing became the foundation of a long-lasting profession. Shortly after, Doris began performing in her hometown. With Barney Rapp's band, she began singing when she was 17 years old. Rapp was the one who suggested she go by a nickname. Kappelhoff, in her opinion, was too lengthy to fit under a marquee. He asked Doris Marianne Kappelhoff to marry him after she sang a popular song at the time. And the result was Doris Day. Joining the legendary Les Brown and his band in the early 1940s was her big break. Doris recorded the hymn for returning ULAWRI veterans, Sentimental Journey with Brown, in 1945. It became an instant hit, catapulting her voice to stardom in the United States. Her subsequent hits, such My Dreams Are Getting Better All the Time, further established her as a leading female vocalist of the era. Doris had already issued hundreds of recordings by the mid-1940s and was a household figure in the radio industry. Her warm and genuine voice, rather than her technical skill, was what set her apart from other performers. Singing as if she were having a one-on-one conversation with each of them, she created an intimate atmosphere. Her extraordinary talent propelled her from a humble Cincinnati girl, whose aspirations of becoming a dancer had been dashed to the status of a national celebrity on the brink of a Hollywood smash hit. Private life. Outside of the limelight of Hollywood, Doris Day's private life diverged significantly from her public persona. She was the cheerful neighborhood girl to her millions of admirers. However, in her personal life, she had a lot of problems, complicated relationships, and a strong commitment to the people and things that were important to her. Outside of the camera, her motherly role was her most significant. Terry Melcher, Doris's only child, was born in 1942. Terry came of age in the music industry, where he established himself as a prolific producer and songwriter. His career in the 1960s brought him close to the cultural pulse of the time, as his name became associated with top groups like the Beach Boys and the Byrds. Even though he dabbled in seedier parts of show business on occasion, Doris was justifiably proud of his achievements. Although Doris didn't always portray marriage in a positive light on television, it was nevertheless a significant chapter in her life. Her first marriage to trombonist Al Jordan began when she was just 19 years old and quickly descended into discord. Although their marriage didn't last long, just 2 years, it brought her the greatest joy of her life. Her son, George Widler, a saxophonist with ties in Hollywood, was her husband later in life. Even though it too ended in divorce after a few years, it did introduce her to new ideologies and communities that would shape her life going forward. She stayed married to producer Martin Melchior for the longest and most publicized of her 3 marriages. Melchior handled a lot of Doris's work during this time, and her career took off. Terry, whom he formally adopted, continued to use the Melchior surname, strengthening the bond between the son and his mother. Doris encountered unexpected emotional and financial challenges after Melchior's death in 1968, the end of their marriage. She met the maitre Barry Comden in a rather unglamorous way. He gave her steak scraps for her beloved dogs, and they subsequently married. Their marriage had its ups and downs, but it ended in divorce just like the others. Doreen revealed a side of herself to moviegoers through her hobbies and interests outside of parenthood and marriage. The Cypress Inn in Carmel by the Sea was one of the pioneering hotels to welcome dogs, and she became actively interested in animal rights beginning in the 1980s. On the other hand, many recalled her kind hospitality and voiced a preference for solitude over the constant company of celebrities. Doris Day desperately sought love and stability in her own life, yet she was frequently bereft of both. The actress's far more complicated story behind the camera, which only came to light years later, had previously charmed audiences with her singing and comedy. The graying veneer and sparkling grin that captivated millions, Doris Day, was embroiled in a $20 million scandal. The most shocking treachery that Doris Day has ever experienced occurred, an embezzlement that jeopardized her entire career. After the death of her third husband, Martin Melchior, in 1968, Doris discovered that about $20 million, a substantial portion of her wealth, had been frittered away and, in essence, taken. She had put her faith in her family lawyer for decades, but he had abused her confidence by taking advantage of her financial situation. Starting in the 1950s, the offender had a pivotal role in her career and the administration of her investments. He was the one who paid bills, negotiated contracts, and made crucial decisions regarding her royalties and properties. On the other hand, his work behind the scenes was far from exceptional. Doris and her family were left fighting for what they lost due to a web of deceit that included questionable investments, false billing, and conflicts of interest. The toll on people's emotions was immense. Doris had spent her whole life amassing an impressive resume that included several film roles, thousands of songs recorded, and the honor of being considered a member of Hollywood aristocracy. Profound shock ensued upon learning that a trusted someone had purposefully sought to undermine her well-deserved sense of security. Not only was she in a financial bind, but she was also betrayed in a way she never imagined possible. The role was played by Doris. In order to reclaim her possessions, she fought tooth and nail in court. It was a slow and difficult process. Years of her life were consumed by lawsuits, negotiations, and court appearances. It turned out that no amount of money could ever make up for what she had lost, or alleviate the sense of violation she had felt, even after a settlement had been reached. At this point in her life, Doris Day revealed an aspect of herself that not many had seen before. An individual going through financial as well as emotional anguish. It showed how easily even the most powerful individuals may fall victim to abuse if they are not careful. The resilience required to overcome such challenges was revealed by it. Doris kept her calm in public despite the betrayal, continuing to fight for causes she believed in, and dedicating herself to causes like animal welfare. The controversy, however, remained indelible, something to remind Doris Day that behind all the laughter and song, she had endured hardships that the public never witnessed. She seemed unshakable and calm for decades, yet her financial struggles gave her life depth. She faced obstacles as big as any Hollywood script, public opinion, and media scrutiny. Doris Day's infectious optimism, refined manners, and magnetic on-screen charisma won her widespread acclaim across the USA. A lot of people looked up to her because of her innocent and charming demeanor, which was a major plus. But the media still found ways to criticize her. Despite the carefully cultivated public image, there was a tendency for the press to demand perfection from her and hold her to unrealistic standards. In 1953, she had an incident that contradicted her popular image. Many expected Day to go on a jubilant binge after receiving her Oscar for Best Original Song for her performance in Calamity Jane's Secret Love. At the Oscars, she refrained from singing the song. The Hollywood media, however, condemned this move immediately. The Hollywood Women's Press Club, known for its annual Golden Apple Awards that recognize both the good and bad behavior of Hollywood personalities, gave her the Sour Apple Award, the year's most uncooperative star, according to her. Doris, whose career was built on charisma and competence, was taken aback by this. The Sour Apple Awards fallout went beyond the surface level. A day after the incident, she admitted that the criticism had a profound emotional impact on her. After experiencing a period of miscommunication and unfair treatment from the very industry that had propelled her to stardom, she decided to distance herself from public appearances. She learned from the examination that not even a carefully crafted public persona is safe. It also showed a struggle that many celebrities know all too well, juggling individuality with societal norms and expectations. Although Doris's refusal to sing was based on her personal preference, it became a contentious issue that some reporters used to paint her as demanding or ungrateful. Doris Day's career was far from destroyed. Despite the negative press, she continued to win over millions of fans, star in blockbuster films, and break records. As time went on, the Sour Apple Award became more of an afterthought than a watershed moment. It spoke to both her honesty and the pressures of celebrity. When even a seemingly insignificant choice may spark controversy, she could make her own decisions, even if they went against popular opinion. The event's final outcome is a tribute to Doris Day's strength in the face of media criticism and the pervasiveness of such criticism in Hollywood. She maintained her profession, her humanitarian work, and her personal integrity in the face of criticism, which she never let overshadow her accomplishments. As an enduring testament to the trials of living in the spotlight and Doris Day's introverted strength in the face of those trials, the story of the Sour Apple Award lives on. Behind the smile is a woman. In her twilight years, Doris Day's love of animals was more than just a hobby. It consumed her completely. A different Doris, one of unwavering commitment, empathy, and determination, was revealed via her work with animals, despite the fact that she had captivated audiences for a lifetime through film and recordings. She began her career in animal welfare in the 1970s, a time when people knew far less about animal welfare and pet care than they do now. Doris decided to dedicate herself to making a practical difference in the lives of animals because of her own enthusiasm for them, and because she had champions among her friends. Money wasn't enough for her. She aspired to build organizations with the capacity to effect lasting change. In 1978, she established what would later be known as the Doris Day Animal Foundation, originally known as the Doris Day Pet Foundation. It served a simple but effective goal: giving a hand to those who take care of animals. She funded spay and neuter initiatives, animal shelters, and rescue organizations through her foundation. Doris focused on long-term solutions that would alleviate community suffering because she believed it was just as important to tackle the cause of animal overpopulation as it was to save individual animals. She advocated from the ground up. Doris took in numerous strays over the years, caring for them in her house, finding them loving homes with vets, and finally putting them to rest. In order to give these animals a chance at a happy, healthy existence, she often sacrificed her own time, energy, and finances. Her level of dedication was above average, showing that her engagement was genuine and not staged. She expanded her sphere of influence in the late 1980s when she founded the Doris Day Animal League, an organization focused on lobbying on a national scale. She insisted that people's attitudes and behaviors needed to shift for cruelty and neglect to disappear. She was an outspoken advocate for animal welfare regulations and public education on proper pet ownership and humane treatment. Promoting spaying and neutering programs to reduce the amount of stray animals was one of her major accomplishments. Doris showed that caring for animals is an eternal pledge by staying dedicated to her cause, long after she stepped away from the spotlight. Animals around the country continue to benefit from her efforts through the organizations she founded, which provide them with support, education, and advocacy. Doris Day demonstrated that there are practical applications for celebrity beyond the entertainment industry. An instrument for kindness and positive change, it has the potential to make a lasting impact that goes beyond the realm of cinema. Became the darling girl next door to Hollywood after surviving unreported violence by her first husband. Even before she became a Hollywood star, Doris Day faced hardship and strife in her personal life. The most excruciating part was perhaps the beginning of her marriage to trombonist Al Jordan in 1941, when Doris was just 19 years old. The wedding gave the impression of being a typical young love between two enthusiastic artists. Still, Doris went through things that she would describe as horrific and formative while indoors. Their brief marriage was marked by Al Jordan's increasing aggression and dominance, both of which were symptoms of his mental health issues, including schizophrenia. Doris contrasted her confident on-stage demeanor with the terrifying reality she described in interviews and her memoirs from 1976, in which she detailed multiple incidents of physical abuse. She recounted how in 1942, when she was pregnant with their son Terrence Paul Jordan, she was nearly abducted by Jordan. His terrifying attempt to induce a miscarriage escalated into a physical attack when she refused. Even though the marriage was short-lived, divorced in 1943, it left an indelible mark on Doris. At a time when she was still discovering her independence, the ordeal forced her to confront the harsh realities of a controlling and fear-based relationship. Despite everything that came her way, Doris found the resilience to not only make it through, but also to press on with her career in film and music. Her resiliency, work ethic, and determination to control her own life were shaped by the profoundly personal trauma she experienced during these years. Also, the widespread issue of domestic violence that went unreported in the middle of the 20th century was brought to light during this abusive period. Social shame and a lack of support networks meant that most women of Doris's era had to face their struggles alone. By discussing it openly for the first time, Doris illuminated the predicament of famous and successful women in Hollywood who, like everyone else, had personal crises. The difficulties Doris faced in her first marriage impacted her approach to subsequent relationships. She became more selective and methodical in her partner selection as she sought emotional security and stability, and she found lasting companionship in her later marriages. Nevertheless, the dark past of her childhood abuse serves as a sobering reminder of the hidden truths underlying her fame. It takes courage and honesty for Doris Day to admit that she has finally dug deep into the pain and difficulties of her first marriage. It shows that even celebrities celebrated for their charisma and cheerfulness have battled with deeply personal problems that shape their identities, providing fans and historians with a more nuanced view of the lady behind the upbeat songs and iconic films. Affair and nervous collapse. Behind the wide smile and happy on-screen character that won over millions, Doris Day possessed personal battles few individuals were aware of at the peak of her life in the 1950s. During a period when she was among Hollywood's leading stars, Doris suffered a nervous breakdown. The demands of working endlessly, public attention, and personal frustration wore down her mental and emotional health. She would later refer to this time as one involving severe stress, fatigue, and feelings of loneliness. Despite the success and fame that were following her, the collapse was a turning point in her career. Doris took herself out of the public eye for a while and concentrated on regaining her health and reconsidering the decisions that had put her into such an extreme state of psychological tension. She revealed that the sheer pace of the filming, plus the turmoil in her private life, such as her troubled first marriage and troubled relationships, brought about an all-conquering pressure that was expressed both in anxiety and physical symptoms. At this time of vulnerability, Doris Day also disclosed in her autobiography an intimate affair with actor Patrick O'Neill. The affair was an open declaration of her human needs and emotional desires, a far cry from her meticulously preserved girl-next-door image. Doris discussed the affair openly, stressing that she lived through it without guilt or shame. She underscored the moments of closeness and connection that were most significant to her, presenting the affair as a response to her quest for true companionship at a time when her marriage had imploded. Most surprising to her public, Doris spoke publicly about the physical details of her sex life, including being unable to pretend to be satisfied in relationships that were not emotionally fulfilling. By opening herself in this way, readers and fans got a look into her insecurities and private life that was unique for someone viewed by the world as only a perfect Hollywood actress. The affair and the nervous breakdown collectively highlighted the dualities of Doris Day's life, the public persona of happiness and perfection, and the secret truth of struggle, passion, and self-discovery. These events conditioned her vision of relationships, intimacy, and self-respect, and shaped the decisions she made in her later marriages and personal life. By exposing these personal tales, Doris demonstrated enormous courage and openness. She let the public to observe that even a person long identified with charm and cheerfulness may endure emotional breakdowns and seek personal enrichment through unexpected avenues. This honest admission adds richness to the story of her life, presenting a more multifaceted and humanized portrayal of one of Hollywood's greatest enduring legends, emotional impact of her father's coldness. Whereas Doris Day is best known for her bright smile and good attitude, her early life was tinged by experiences that left indelible emotional traces. Perhaps the most lasting influence on her early years was the detached and usually frigid nature of her father, William Kappelhoff. Despite his job as a music instructor and choir master, he did not make himself emotionally accessible in terms of support and connection to his children, and the absence of warmth had a lasting influence on Doris throughout her youth. Doris had two elder brothers, one of whom passed away before she was born, which made her family life complicated and fragile. She portrayed her father as a strict and introverted guy whose approach to discipline was more formal than loving. This emotional detachment gave Doris a sense of yearning a yearning for approbation and affection that would accompany her throughout adulthood. Nonetheless, she tended to maintain the rosy image that Hollywood expected of female film stars in her early career. Thus, she rarely spoke publicly about this aspect of her childhood. Later on, Doris discovered other sources of joy and warmth in her life, rather than letting her father's cruelty define her. Growing up, she helped out in the family pretzel factory, where she got to know customers and honed the work ethic and sense of responsibility that would later shape her character. In contrast to her father's lack of affection, these brief encounters with people outside of her immediate family served as a source of inspiration and direction. Everyday pleasures also provided Doris with refuge and escape. She found that reading comics gave life to her imagination, and that listening to the radio took her away with the tunes of the period. Her artistic pursuits, dancing and singing, provided her with a means of expressing herself and a springboard for her career. Because she did not receive the emotional support she needed at home, she was able to develop resilience and independence through her involvement in the arts. Her father's emotionally distant nature cast a long shadow on her relationships and the way she nurtured those around her. Even though she was a faithful friend and doting mother, she also understood the importance of cultivating kindness and warmth wherever she could, particularly with her son Terry Melchior, and later with animals and charity. Her early need for connection and understanding molded her sensitive side and empathy, which in turn molded the compassion for which she would become famous. Doris Day revealed the hidden complexities of her youth through these introspections written later in adulthood. Her father's icy demeanor had a profound effect on her, both personally and professionally. Rather than making her bitter, it inspired her to be extraordinarily strong, imaginative, and empathic. The multifaceted Doris Day had much more than the sunny image she became famous for. On cinema, she embodied elegance and charisma. A woman who endured hardship in ways that few could fathom lurked behind her beautiful smile. Doris endured trials that would have broken the spirit of most people, from an abusive first marriage to the stunning discovery of her third husband's financial exploitation. She proved her mettle with every obstacle. Still, her character shone through as she faced them with a calm, unflinching resolve. Doris endured intensely private battles, even as she bore the burdens of her Hollywood stardom. Her personal life was already complicated, due to the emotional scars left by her father's coldness and the instability in her sexual relationships. She had a nervous breakdown in the 1950s and had an affair that showed her desire for genuine connection. She also suffered from heartache, betrayal, and vulnerable times. Even while she subtly weathered the storms behind the scenes, she kept working, delighting her audience. She was incredibly resilient, and it wasn't only for her own survival. Doris established groups that would have a long-lasting influence on animal welfare, channeling her experiences into a lifelong dedication to the cause. She was an outspoken opponent of cruelty to animals and an advocate for pet adoption via her charitable organizations. Doris Day's selfless love to people and animals showed a side of her that went beyond the glamour of Hollywood. It revealed a compassionate, sympathetic, and devoted heart that had survived tragedy. Being strong is frequently more about being able to persist through adversity than about never having to face adversity, as Doris's tale shows. She had to deal with brutality, grief, treachery, and letdowns. Still, she never wavered from her authentic self, and her creativity, activism, and moral fortitude never ceased to motivate. Her story exemplifies how everyone, no matter how perfect they appear on the outside, has their own personal struggles, and how our legacy is defined more by how gracefully we face adversity than by any amount of recognition or honors we may receive. Doris Day leaves behind more than just her music and movies. Her tenacity, generosity, and honesty serve as a model for others. She showed that it is possible to rise above, love, and make a great impact on the world even when faced with overwhelming odds. She channeled her pain into purposeful action. In addition to living on in people's memories, her story serves as an inspiration for the strength of the human spirit, kindness, and tenacity. Much obliged for your time. Make sure you subscribe, like, and click the bell icon to ensure you never miss a video. If you loved discovering Doris Day's story with us, leave a comment with your ideas. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and press the bell icon. Thanks for watching.